Hey, welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I'm your host, Rob Z. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. Today on the show, we have Joe Curry with us. We're going to be talking about true wealth today, redefining retirement, purposeful planning, confident spending, and how do you have a dynamic retirement? How do you make that a great transition, a smooth transition, and an impactful transition for your life? These are really important things to talk about because we're all going to come to that stage at some point in our life. And the more we think about this, the more we can prepare for it and plan for it. And if you're somebody like me, it's something I've probably ignored for a lot of my life until my wife really started driving it home. Like, hey, someday you're going to retire. You got to have a plan in place. So I'm really glad that I have you on the show today. And Joe, I'd like to dive in with a question right off the bat. Let's go back to when you were 15 years old. You were talking about how you saw the power of sound advice. You had your father's client said that your guidance helped her sleep at night during the dot-com crash around the year 2000. That moment ignited your passion for financial planning. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's really amazing to have such a clear vision for what you want to do with your life at 15. Talk about that moment and how that left a big impact on you.
Yeah, sure. So I think that at that moment, I kind of realized that work didn't have to just be something you grinded out to be able to pay the bills, and that you could do something where you're helping other people and you're getting, a sense of satisfaction and also being able to pay the bills kind of all from one thing. So I really love that idea when and I mean, I knew what he had been doing for quite a while, but it just kind of clicked at that point, like, hey, he's actually really helping people. And at the same time, I knew that, he worked hard, he worked a lot of hours, but also he was able to still be flexible and be there, for my brother's hockey, my hockey and baseball and all that kind of stuff. So that really got me, passionate and going down this road of, financial planning, a career where I can be helping people and also doing well myself and enjoying it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a great career because it makes sense, right? It checks all the boxes. You're serving people at a high level, helping them plan for their future, but also that teaches you the financial planning that you need for your future. I love any sort of win-win scenario like that is perfect. And as we dive into this conversation, I think that opening right there is really important because, as we were saying before we started, people leading into the retirement, they don't necessarily know who they are or know what they quote unquote want to do with their life because they've been so identified with their job, right? And that's something that is a huge issue coming up towards retirement. So we're going to go there in a second. I want to welcome everybody here first. The Unstuck movement, true testimonies of breakthrough. I created this platform because I've been stuck in my life. Joe, I'm sure you've been stuck at places in your life. We all find places where we get stuck. We need to find breakthrough. So I bring incredible guests on the show who have true testimonies of making those breakthroughs a reality, so you know it's possible for yourself also. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com and the Pro Podcaster Academy. So if you're somebody who has been thinking about starting a podcast for a long time, you don't know how to get through all the nuts and bolts of actually making it happen, but you want to make a lasting impact on people's lives. You want to be the go-to authority in your space. You want to make incredible personal and professional connections. I'll help you launch your podcast. If you have a podcast, how do you streamline it? How do you monetize it? I'd love to help you with that. Also, you can join the Pro Podcaster Academy at robzwentz.com. Today, Joe Curry with us, a certified financial planner and the founder of Your Retirement Planning Simplified, where he helps Canadians align their retirement plans with life values, not just numbers. As host of Canada's fastest growing retirement podcast, Joe simplifies financial planning with clarity, confidence, and a focus on true wealth. Interesting. I might switch gears as we start here. What does true wealth mean to you?
Yeah. So I think sometimes we get lost in the numbers, like, hey, what's that optimal choice? But really, money is just a means to an end, right? So when we think of true wealth, everyone could define that for themselves. But the way that we look at that is, it's having the financial freedom to do the things you want with the people you want.
Yeah. Being able to have that space, to have that opportunity to live the life that you want to live. And the sooner we can get to that, the better. And having the right target is really the most important key there. It sounds like you were really lucky, blessed that you figured out at 15, wow, this is what I want to do with my life. And a lot of people never figure that out. So what do you do how do you advise somebody who's getting closer to retirement? maybe even in their 40s, 50s, and they're still unclear. The job is their identity. How do you help them to shift that perspective so they can figure out, who am I going to be once I am retired?
Yeah. So really it's doing some reflection, but really we try to help people start with, rather than just the finances, take a step back and start thinking about your values. Now, a lot of people kind of intuitively maybe know some of their values, but they've never really done the work to figure out, like, what are the core values? And if they're, if you're married, you have a spouse, partner, what are our family core values, and are we living to those? Right. So, we have an exercise we do with our clients to kind of help them get some clarity around what those values are, so that we can use the values as a bit of a filter in our process for spending our time and spending our money. And then beyond that, to get a little more specific to your question, for a lot of people, our purpose is our work, it's our career, it's our business, whatever we're doing. And so some people have a hard time leaving that. Some people think, hey, I just want to get out of this job to retirement, but they get there and they haven't planned for what life looks like when they get to retirement. They know they have enough money, which is great. That's one part, but that's only one part. So then it's identifying, like, what is your purpose? What's going to get you out of bed in the morning? So again, we have an exercise that can help people get some clarity around that when they haven't figured that out. We try to get people to kind of come up with 3 priorities. So for me, for example, right now, while I'm working, my priorities, which I would also consider my purpose, is my family, is my business, and my health. Those are the 3 things. There's lots of things I like to do and spend time around, but those are the 3 things I got to make sure I take care of. So as you're approaching retirement, the example I give is, my family and my health are probably going to remain priorities for me. They're going to continue to take care of and focus on. But that other piece that was fulfilled by work, like, what's that next piece going to be? So if for some people, they already know that. For some people, it's like, I have grandkids and, that's enough for me. That's the purpose that gets me up and keeps me going. But for others, it's not quite that simple. And so, sometimes when it is difficult to figure that piece out, we kind of can look at that other purpose or the other priority as actually going out and trying new things. So, every month or every quarter, we're trying something else. So we're going to try a new volunteer position or a new activity where we're getting out and meeting people. So sometimes it's just experimentation, but it's being intentional about it and not just, kind of going through retirement or that next stage without any intention.
It's pickleball, right? Isn't that the thing you do whenever you
that's
retire?
the big thing. Yeah.
At least that's what I've seen from my stepdad. He loves playing pickleball, and it is a lot of fun. But yeah, it's so important, man, because our school system, literally, you never talk about vision, you never talk about goals, you never talk. I mean, at least most of the schools, no schools that I have been to talked about these things. Nobody talks about your values. Those things don't come up. So you wonder why, when you sit down to make a vision, make a plan, what are my values? It's like deer in the headlights, because like you said, it can be in somebody's head. It could be like, well, here's, I know what I value, but to verbalize it and put it on paper is really hard for people to do, because we've literally probably never had to do this unless somebody outside of school made us do it, which is crazy to think of. I would imagine, I would hope and pray that some private schools and maybe Montessori schools and things like that go through these things, but public schools, you don't touch on any of this stuff. And so unless you've had somebody help you through that process, it can be really hard. Do you find that to be a real struggle for some people to put those things to paper? Because I know, even just working with business owners, that can be, it can be a huge roadblock, and it can take a long time to finally make that a reality.
Yeah. So we used to do it a different way, where I would kind of walk clients through this through asking questions. But what I found is a lot of people had a really hard time opening up to that. So we came up with a new exercise where it is more, you can do it independently. And we give examples. And so there's a process to work through. So that has definitely, we've got very little pushback since we went this way, where people can kind of do it in their own space and work through it. And it's also really interesting. And you could tell how many people really haven't thought about this, or at least haven't had conversations about it, because we've had a lot of, really interesting and good conversations with our clients who are couples, where they're like, yeah, I didn't really know this, or, how important this was to, my spouse, things like that. So it really creates some interesting and powerful conversations.
Yeah. The fact that it usually doesn't get talked about means that the person you've been married to for maybe 10, 20, 30 years doesn't even know the answers to your own values, to your own goals, to your own vision. And that's what a beautiful thing too, to bring people together, right? Especially heading into retirement. You could set a vision for your second life together. And that would give you a lot of hope and purpose too. What is you probably know this better than I would, the percentage of people who pass away once they retire, right? There's if you don't find that meaning once you retire, there's a higher chance that you're going to die quicker. Is that true?
Yeah. So I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I mean, I think we all know people who have passed away right after retiring, right? They just kind of get depressed. And then, a lot of times the first year is exciting and there's a lot of new things to try, but you can only play so much pickleball or golf or whatever. And if you were, pretty career driven, all of a sudden, if you haven't figured out your purpose, depression can sit in. And then next thing you know, like you've seen people pass away who you're just completely unexpected. In fact, it actually just happened recently to someone we know who is 9 months into retirement. So I don't know the actual numbers on it, but yeah, it's definitely a thing, and definitely important to be thinking about what is going to be that driver.
I think about this. It's interesting because I have my mom and dad, my stepmom, my stepdad, and literally my mom became an entrepreneur when she retired. She started a painting business. So now she has a little Japanese, one of those little Japanese trucks, and it says she paints on the side of it. And she literally goes around town and paints people. And she's booked. She's booked up, and she's 67 years old. My dad, he started building a house. He retired. He's he's building a house attached to my sister's house, which is just wild. He's like the foreman, the general contractor for the job, and he's not a general contractor at all. So he's found a purpose. My stepdad, he sold his business and started sailing. No lie, he became a captain, and he's down in the British Virgin Islands sailing people around the Keys and the islands down there, which is just amazing. And I look at that and I'm like, I'm looking for myself, wow, what a great example. 3 of my parents are doing things they never would have done before that they love doing. They found that second wind, and it didn't seem like it was difficult for them. It's just kind of happened naturally. So I have that example, but I'm sure there's tons of people out there who don't have those examples of okay, what are we going to do next? And what would you say to somebody who is maybe in their 40s, not really thinking about these things, who needs to prepare for this stuff coming up in 20 years? Can you start preparing now? Would you say that's something that is what advice would you give somebody in that area?
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing is you can start by getting clear on what your values are today, right? And so from a financial standpoint, getting clear on your values also, as I mentioned earlier, gives you a bit of a filtering process for how you're spending your time and your money, right? So there's a good book by, I think it's David Bach. It's called The Latte Factor. And it basically just tells a story of a girl who's a travel writer. Anyway, she's spending money at the Latte Factor. She spends her $7 every day on a latte and in the morning. And it goes through kind of how she can't figure out how there's no money left at the end of the day. So it walks through, she meets a guy and he explains the importance of living with intentionality. So it's not that you can't have whatever it is you want. You just can't have everything, right? So getting clear on those values, living more intentionally can allow you to now, when you start thinking forward, how long do I want to do what I'm doing in this career? And when do I want to be financially free? You can start doing the planning, figure out how much money you need to be putting aside, and having that filtering process makes it easier to be just spending the money on things that are really important for you today, and then having still some money left over to be putting away to that future you. So that's one thing I would say. And then kind of as you get closer, I'm kind of maybe drifting through the 40s here a bit, but you just gave some really great examples. A lot of people think that I have to just grind it out until I'm a specific age, and then I just completely stop working, and that's retirement. But I don't really love the word retirement, but from a business standpoint, a podcast standpoint, retirement's good for SEO because that's what people are searching. Yeah. But really,
there's no other word for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think striving for financial independence, financial freedom is is good. It's a freedom to choose what you want to do, right? So it doesn't mean you have to stop working, but it's getting to a point where you have some freedom around your finances. So maybe you can take another, a career change or another occupation that you actually really love doing, like your mom or your stepmom, whoever's doing the
my
art.
mom.
Your mom, yeah, your mom, doing the art stuff, right? So maybe that is something you can actually transition out of your career you're doing today that you don't like earlier, because there's still another way to make some money. It's just actually making money doing something you like to do.
Yeah, identifying those things that you like to do, super important, not leaving those in the background. It's really an incredible opportunity to step into that. Because I know there's a guy that I'm working with right now, and his plan in 5 years, they're going to retire and they're going to travel, right? So I was like, okay, so that might take up like 3 years. But what about after the traveling's done? Then what do you, I mean, I guess you could, I've known elderly people who go on cruises their entire life. I guess that's something you can do, but there's probably got to be something past that. I'm curious for yourself. I mean, this is what you do for a living. Do you have a plan for yourself already laid out?
So for me, I think it's just evolving within the business that I have. Like, I really like what I do. I also love the business planning side and running the business and thinking about how we continue to grow the business and provide more value to our clients. So I think really over time, I'm probably just more transitioning in my role within the firm, maybe less client facing, more mentoring other advisors in the business, things like that.
Do you think you'll ever truly retire?
Probably not. And I don't know, there might be I just know. So like one of my core values is just like, I think the best way of putting it is a better way. So growth maybe is another way of putting it, but like I need to have something that I'm just learning and improving on all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So, but I also feel like I don't really have a hard time finding something else to focus on and learn about and continue to grow with. So for myself, I've thought a lot about this, but I'm also not too worried about it, just because I know I just have no trouble finding different things that I can go all in on. And as long as it's allowing me to grow and find, again, like a better way to do things.
Yeah, man, it's like creativity and imagination, right? There's so many things you can do. If you can't find something, then you haven't tried hard enough yet, because there's a billion things that would, well, I'd like to think that, at least for me, that'd be the case. Too many things I can have my attention on, right? So it's like, how could you ever be bored? But I totally understand for some people that's a gigantic issue, and they've never had to come face to face with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to transition. We're going to take a break real quick, shout out the sponsor of the show. When we come back, though, talk about the financial side of things. How do we prepare? How do we actually practically get the preparation for the finances right, and make sure that we have what we need whenever we do retire to do the things we love to do. I'd just like to know the steps that you walk people through in that arena to help them prepare. We'll talk about that in 1 minute. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Joe, I love this conversation because it's really important and something we can really push off. And so it's really valuable to dive into this and to get it in your head, be thinking about it, what you're going to do. And one of the biggest things when you do retire revolves around money. So how can somebody who is heading towards that retirement age transition from saving to spending without worrying about running out of money?
Yeah. So I'd say the first thing is start early. Ideally, you're thinking about this and planning this out long before you get to that age or that time where you're ready to transition out of work or to whatever the next stage is. But I mean, so most people who we're working with are within 5 years of retirement, and this is what we're doing is we're trying to help them get some clarity on what life looks like once they stop working, so that we can get a better understanding of, what do they need from their finances to be able to create a paycheck, not outlive their money, be prepared if things don't go as planned. So it really starts with, that like figuring out that vision, as you said earlier, Rob, and then from there, getting clarity on where you are today, like, what do we have for available resources today, and then filling the gap. So what do we need to do to get you from where you are today to where you need to be in order to stop doing the work that you're currently doing, right? And so that's going to include cash flow planning, like making sure there's enough freed up cash flow to be putting aside into an investment plan. So figuring out that an investment portfolio, and based on your time horizon, your comfort level around investments, that's going to determine what does that portfolio look like how much risk are you comfortable taking. And then based on that, we start to get an idea of what we could expect for a rate of return into the future, which helps us kind of fine tune and how much you should be putting away. And then it also, at the same time, we're looking at, what could go wrong? Like if things don't go to plan, we get hurt and need to be off work earlier, or God forbid, my spouse passes away earlier. So what are the things we need to put in place to make sure that, God forbid, something like that happens, everything still works out, at least financially at the very least. So that's a pretty high level overview. I don't know if you want to dive into any more specifics.
Well, I'm thinking, it's really valuable. If you're like me, somebody like myself, I usually, for better or worse, maybe live in the now. I don't think or worry too much about the future, which can be like a delusional optimism kind of thing. So hopefully you have somebody in your life that pushes these things on you. Number one, hopefully your spouse, if you're not that person, your spouse pushes you towards it. Because my wife, she's like on it with me. She's like, we got to get these things figured out. I'm like, yeah, but I've got 20 years, 25, 30 years, whatever. And I don't even want to retire anyways. And she's like, it doesn't matter. We got to get this figured out. Right. So if you don't have somebody like that in your life, you're the perfect person to go to. Right. It's being mindful. Well, even if you do have somebody like that in your life, still go to a professional who can help you really get practical in the ways of walking through that. But I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle, is just knowing this is super important. I really need to focus on it. And you want to get it right. And I'm in the beginning phases of that right now with my wife, because she's, just kind of like nudging us in that direction. Somebody who's more future thinking. And I love that. It's such a good balance to have. When you talk about tax efficient retirement strategies, maybe some simple ways that retirees can maximize their taxes, keep more of their money, because obviously that's going to be a huge issue.
Yeah, so it'd be a bit different between Canada and the US, but same. Similar in a lot of ways. Like we have different types of accounts, but from a naming standpoint, but a lot of them work similarly. So you have like your retirement accounts, you have your we call them non-registered accounts, which would just be no kind of tax efficiency built around them. You guys would have Roth accounts. We have tax-free savings accounts. You guys will have Social Security. We have Canada Pension Plan. So there's these similarities. But at the end of the day, from a tax efficiency standpoint, before retirement, we're looking at, what kind of tax bracket are we in today versus what kind of tax bracket do we expect to be in retirement? Mm-hmm. And so that's going to drive some of the decisions of where we're putting our savings today. So for example, in Canada, we have an RRSP. So that's a retirement account. We put money into that account and we get a tax deduction. But when we take it out in retirement, we pay tax on it. We pay that future tax. So I think an IRA would be similar for you guys, or 401k. Mm-hmm. Making those decisions. So if our tax bracket is going to be the same in retirement as it is while we're working, we might want to look at actually putting money into tax-free savings accounts or Roth accounts, for example. Now, once we get into retirement, it's really figuring out. So we have these different buckets. We have our tax deferred buckets. So meaning it's growing in there and we're not paying tax until we take it out. Then we have our taxable buckets. That just means that we're paying tax as we go. And then we have our tax-free bucket, which means that, as it grows, we pay no tax. And when we take it out, we pay no tax. So we're managing those different buckets along with things like Social Security income, or if you start a painting business and you have other income coming in, like how are we looking at all these different buckets we have to minimize our lifetime taxes, right? So I think one of the differences between a financial planner and an accountant sometimes is an accountant is typically looking at, how do we pay the least amount of tax this year? Whereas a financial planner, what we're trying to look at is how are we limiting your lifetime tax bill? And so maybe that means paying a little bit more tax today to get something out of that tax deferred account, knowing that it's actually going to lessen the amount of tax we pay over a lifetime, and maybe lessen the amount of tax that our next generation, our kids, are paying when we pass away. So it's a bit of a puzzle, just kind of taking all the different buckets or the different sources of income and putting it together. So we're talking about optimizing retirement income from a tax standpoint. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, man. And it's really important to have somebody like yourself, because you're objectively looking at it, no emotion involved. And I think that's a huge piece of it too, right? If you're doing this for yourself, you can get kind of wrapped up in your own head around the whole thing. But if you have somebody like yourself who's strictly just there to help, look at it objectively, and make the right decisions, it's hugely impactful, which I encourage everybody should have a mentor. You should have a coach. You should be a coach for somebody. You should be a mentor for somebody, but you should have financial planner without a doubt, like in your life, because that's somebody who's, coaching you on your money. And that's really, really valuable. And again, one of those things that was never taught to us in school, right? We were never taught how to handle money, how to deal with things like that. And so just the same as the vision, same as the goals and the values and things of that nature, you really need somebody to kind of walk you through that process who's an expert in it, unless you're an expert in it yourself, right? So it's such a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think a big thing, there's a few things where I think working with someone like myself would make sense is, one, you don't know what you don't know. So you might, think you're doing okay, but there might be things out there you have no idea, ways to save tax. Maybe you're paying too much tax, or maybe your money is not invested in a way that's as, as safe as you think it is. So that's part of it. Part of it is accountability. So, once have your vision, what's the accountability for you to actually follow through on the actions for you to achieve your vision, right? So one of the things would be, you talked about thinking about today, and it's hard to think into the future sometimes. So if you're working with somebody, you say, yeah, you know what, this is what I want things to look like. You come up with a plan for how to get there. So a lot of that can be automated, right? So having a planner set it up so it's automated, so you don't have to think about it all the time. It's just happening. And then you do your regular check-ins to see, are you on track? Have things changed where we need to make some adjustments? And then there's the just avoiding the big mistake, right? Like, you never know, things look scary. You kind of panic with your money. That could be like that one big mistake could cost you hundreds of thousands or more a future retirement income, right? So just making sure you're avoiding that big mistake.
Great point. Yeah, you can make gigantic mistakes and be paying for them for years to come. And that kind of stuff can happen in a heartbeat. It can happen in the moment, right? So it's having that advisor there, somebody who's kind of holding your hand, watching what you're doing, is really vital. What are some overlooked aspects of retirement people don't think about until they get there? Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that is like, I didn't see that one coming until I'm actually retired now, and you're like, oh crap?
Yeah, so I think we've touched a lot on that purpose piece. Like, what are we actually doing? What's getting us out of bed once we're no longer doing, what we did for 30 years?
Yeah.
So that really is the biggest one. But then there's other things. You talked a little bit about kind of living in the now, or thinking about now. Like, I think that is important because we see a lot of retirees. A lot of them live healthy, long lives, but a lot of them also, they're seeing their friends get sick or family members get sick it's just a bit of a different dynamic. So I think that one of those priorities really needs to be health. Like take care of yourself. Think about that, because things start to break down at a certain point. And you want to make sure, if there's things you want to do, like I've seen it so many times in here, we're trying to get clients, hey, you've been saying for, 5 years, you want to do like this trip or this activity, and you still haven't done it. What's holding you back? So we try to work people through those things, but so many times it just gets to a point where, they just can't do it anymore. Mobility issues or cognitive issues, things start coming up where they can't do it. So I think it's really, understanding that, again, it comes back to the values, the vision, like what do you want things to look like, what is important to you, and then act on that. Don't just do it as an exercise, but use that to filter in how you're spending your time.
Yeah, you just brought up a great point too, because a lot of the times we'll push off the things that would be the most enjoyable in life, right? We'll push off things that you really want to do. They aren't necessary to do, but at the end of the day, the things that are going to bring you joy are necessary things to do, like, because they're going to bring you that fulfillment that you need, the experiences that you'd want to have, memories that you're going to make. And that stuff can be seen as unimportant when really it's kind of, I would say, near the top of the list of great things to do. I always ask for quotes when people come on the show. And the quote that you gave me was, do we stop playing because we grow old, or do we grow old because we stop playing? I think that speaks to exactly what we're talking about right now, right? So what does that quote mean to you? How have you applied that to your life, even though you're not even to that retirement age yet?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I have a couple of buddies who we still do tons of activities together. We're always trying new things. But I just noticed a lot of our friends, so I'm 40 now, over the last 20 years, a lot of our friends stopped doing a lot of the things that we used to do for fun. So, I mean, I still play hockey usually a couple times a week, still out golfing. I've gone through I started doing Spartan races a few years ago, and now I've switched that to doing a couple half marathons. So always looking for something else to kind of push myself. And a big part of it is I also want, I have kids who are 8 and 6 now, and I want to continue to, play with hockey with them when they get older. Like I got to play with my dad still plays hockey. We still play together sometimes, which is kind of fun. So I want to see that in the future to be able to do that with my kids. And then I just, started doing some mountain biking a few years ago, which, I don't think most people think you're starting mountain biking in your 40s. Obviously you can, but it's not typical, especially when I look around me. So, for me, it's never not doing something because, I'm too old for that. For me, it's always let's try something new, or how do we, keep going? So that's something I definitely live by.
Yeah. And really, really important because why not? And like you said, hitting 40, there's nothing saying that you're not allowed to, except for the thoughts inside of your head that are like, oh, I'm too old to do this thing now. You got to try new stuff out. And if you don't do that, you're going to live a life of, regret, number one, but also that it keeps you mentally sharp. I mean, we look at dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, there are studies that show that the more mentally active you are and more physically active you are, you can stave off a lot of those things. You can push those things back because you're constantly creating new neural pathways in your brain. And it's also, it's just healthy. It's just creatively healthy for you to do that, let alone physically healthy. So I love that, man. That's really important. And I think when it comes to retirement, right, people, usually it's about money. It's like, oh, do I have enough money? And I don't want to work anymore. And that leaves this giant void of, wow, what could be? So I love the fact that you're getting people prepared to do that. What's to come? What could be the next thing? So as we come to the close of this episode, I want to encourage people to check you out online. So you can click the Get the Navigator tab at retirementplanningsimplified.ca. What happens when they click that tab?
Yeah, so you get the Retirement Navigator. So you'll also go on our newsletter. We put out a lot of so twice a week, put out some tips around. A lot of it is kind of what we've been talking about today, right? So we follow kind of an Alex Hormozi. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but his kind of formula for just super short, read in under 60 seconds, real advice you can use. And
What's
then
his name?
It's Alex Hormozi.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably know him. And then the Navigator itself, though, it has an exercise right in there for figuring out your values, the same exercise we use with our clients. And it also has an exercise around finding purpose, right? So figuring out your purpose, those priorities. I mentioned 3 priorities ideally.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that exercise right in there. And then beyond that, we have some other pieces around figuring out what do you need for cash flow and retirement. Thinking about the different retirement income streams you're going to have once you get to retirement, setting up a retirement income plan, and other things to think about. So it's a pretty in-depth guide. But I think even if you just went in there, no matter what age or stage you're at, the values and the purpose piece, I think it would be very worthwhile.
Yeah, no doubt. Do that today if you have never done that before. That is super valuable. So you can click the Navigator tab at retirementplanningsimplified.ca. The link is in the bio. Joe, thank you for your time today. There's one question I always love to ask people as we sign off. So say you're never going to talk to me or see me ever again. Anybody who's been on here on the live stream or who watches this, you're never going to hear from them or talk to them ever again. What message would you leave?
Oh, just live a life of intention.
That's good. Be intentional with what you do.
Yeah.
It's impactful. Good, man. Awesome. I love this. Another true testimony of breakthrough. Thank you for your time. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.